Hi, I'm Rosemary Armeo, and this is An Armeo on the Brink, Chapter 1.5. I need to thank all of you who listened to our initial podcast, and especially those of you who wrote or called or otherwise let me know what you found right and wrong about it. And we listened to what you found wrong. We have fixed the audio. We're looking at new music. I am trying to speak more slowly so you can understand me and introduce each of the panelists so that you can figure out who is talking. And I'm hoping that you will write to me after this chapter and tell me that you have seen all the improvements. This is a really good chapter. Our speakers today are two people, amazing journalists. I worked with them years ago at the Baltimore Sun. Like me, they've moved on to new careers outside of print journalism. The first is Candy Thomson, who was a reporter, editor, spent decades at the Baltimore Sun, then became a spokesperson for the Maryland state parks and game wardens. She is witty, foul-mouthed. She won a First Amendment case that gave her the right to call a politician a get this asshat. And it was quite lively. She has had an encounter with Mike Tyson. She's covered 5 Olympics, and she is now based up in Cape Cod and writing political columns for her local small town newspaper. Our second panelist will be Joel McCord. We all work together in the Anne Arundel Bureau of the Baltimore Sun. He also was at the Baltimore paper for decades, left it, and then moved into radio. He was a reporter and various other jobs up to and including news director for the NPR station, public radio station in Baltimore, WYPR. He's also an awesome trumpet player. In fact, he would rather be playing small jazz or big band music right now rather than doing this. But we've coerced them both to come on. I don't pay panelists. I understand that's the way we do it in radio now. So these are free, but still very freewheeling speakers. And so they're the people I've asked to come and talk with us today about 3 topics that we've selected. The first one kind of selected us. It's all anybody is talking about and will be for some time. And that's looming war. We are on the brink of war in the Middle East. Candy, let's start with you. What do you think of President Biden going to Israel? That was unusual. What do you think of the position the United States has taken? Where's this all headed?
Well, I have to say I was impressed that he went, just as I was impressed that he went to Ukraine. I think that's what a good leader does. I think a leader leads, and a leader leads from the front. I know Obama was famous for one time saying you can lead from the rear. I think it was Obama. Anyway, I don't think you can lead from the rear. Certainly not with a region that's already very touchy, on the brink, as you said, on the brink of war. I think it needed something dramatic. I think it needed a good, old, wise hand who is well-versed in foreign policy. I think the team of Biden and Blinken has been really on target. I think that the two of them have done extraordinary things. And, and I hope they can keep it up. I mean, I hope they get the backing. I hope that Congress, whenever it gets its act back together again, will act decisively. I hope the president's speech to the nation will be one of those things that is galvanizing. And, certainly his speeches to date on these issues of the Middle East have been really, they had real moral clarity to them.
Yeah. One more question before I move on to Joel. You talked about the politicians. How has the media done covering this conflagration?
I hate what the media has done. I mean, I don't even know where to begin. To me, it's a really weird situation in that you've got two countries taking out ads on social media. I mean, I was just reading a Politico story that was saying that the Israeli Defense Force has taken out, 30, 40, 50 ads on social media to do their point. Hamas has certainly worked the crowd pretty well. And we have a bunch of journalists who just can't stop, say, what do we know? what don't we know, and where are we going? So it's really hard for people to know who to listen to, because you've got big examples. You've got the New York Times and the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal all having to walk back, or slyly walk back, instead of being upfront about, okay, right, we may have rushed this. They just change the headline and change the story. Right. And if you're not paying serious attention, you get lost really quickly. I mean, I'm retired and I can follow it, but if you're somebody who listens on the way to work, goes to work, listens on the way home, the whole day can change, and you have no idea how we got from morning to night.
It's really true. Joel, what's your take on all of this, or any of this?
Candy hit a whole lot of the same points that I had thought of. That the trip to Israel, outside of the danger factor, should a president put himself in that kind of danger, it showed true leadership, and it showed the president of the U.S. engaged and supporting Israel, which in the U.S. is always good politics. There are Palestinians here in the U.S. and others who probably don't approve, but really not enough of them to hurt him in, say, November of 2024. So, and keep in mind, he did manage to convince the Israelis to at least allow some humanitarian aid into the Palestinians, all of which is a good thing. As far as the media coverage goes, it has been scary. Who knows what to believe anymore? Mm-hmm. you go with that. Somebody who I even forget who ran with that. I forget. That's part of the later in the show. Who ran with that story about the beheaded babies?
Oh,
right.
That was killer. I used that in journalism classes.
Right. Unbelievable. It was just, and when you have Hamas and the Israeli government both using social media to promote their points and their sides of the story, who are you going to believe? I don't know. I have a rule for myself. If it's on social media, take it with a humongous grain of salt and go find yourself another source of information, because it's very likely to be not exactly true.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of your saying. I'm going to be a little more critical of Biden than you are. I'm kind of horrified that the United States signed up to whatever Israel wants. They were the victims of unspeakable evil. That's my cuckoo clock. Maybe it's an opinion about me. We are going to sign on to anything they want, and we'll send weapons and extra arms, whatever you need. And what they want, what they have projected that they are going to do, is, to me, genocide. They have a densely populated area with no egress right now. I guess they're still working on that. And they're saying, just move or we're going to plow right through you. I'm sorry, that is the definition of genocide. Why is the U.S. signing on to that? I'm horrified by it. I don't like Hamas, but Hamas is not the Palestinians. And there are other ways to deal with the terrorism of Hamas than going in and wiping out thousands of Palestinians who have been putting up with unbelievable oppression and apartheid in this area since 1948. This is not to say that Israel does not have a right to exist. I certainly do not think that. I would never say it, even if I did in America. But for us not to recognize, to even listen to their narrative, is horrible to me. I understand the progressives in the Democratic Party being upset with Joe Biden for this. I think he tried to walk it back a little during his visit. But he's going to bring 20 trucks into Gaza for these millions of people who are now facing bombardment, 6,000 bombs a week from Israel. Doesn't seem right to me. And as for the media, yeah, I am horrified by journalists who should know better, who should know how the fog of war and the impulse to tell your story, to try to win in words, is working. So you come out with a story that says there are beheaded babies. That's no name attached to it. No name. The only source is the Israeli Defense Force. Doesn't that give you some qualm? And instead, it's still everywhere, even now that it's been debunked. When the Israeli government itself has said, no, that didn't really happen. There were other atrocities, don't get me wrong, but not beheaded babies. And they're still promoting it. It's as if the reporters are a bunch of sports guys covering a team, and they're cheering for one side or the other, and that ruins your credibility, your skepticism. So with this hospital thing, oh my God, we still don't know, but at least now it's being reported in the right way, which is we're looking at the evidence. We still don't know which side it is that did this.
And that goes to Candy's point about the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal having to walk back headlines.
Yep.
The Israelis bombed the hospital. Well, maybe it wasn't the Israelis after all. We don't know. We're checking into it.
I agree with so much of what you've said. I mean, I do like the fact that Biden said Palestinians aren't Hamas. I think that's like key to most of America, is just you have to keep saying that. Yep. My favorite quote so far has been from Human Rights Watch, and I wrote it down. You do not get to target civilians because somebody else targeted civilians. It's not reciprocal because your obligations are to the civilians. It's not a deal between fighters. It's a deal with humanity. And that speaks to me.
Any final thoughts? Where do you think we're going to be a week from now?
How do we know? Hezbollah and the Israeli military have been trading tit for tat shots across the northern border. When Israel launches its attack, is Hezbollah going to come across the north and force them into a two-front war? Who knows? And will there be peace talks? I'm not holding my breath for some time. How do you have peace talks with a nation that bombed and strafed your country indiscriminately, killing thousands, shutting off supplies of food and fuel, or on the other hand, how do you have peace talks with some political entity that invaded your nation and killed civilians, took old people and children as hostages? It's going to be really difficult.
Yep. The only person happy right now is Vladimir Putin, I think.
Yeah.
And our Mail on the Brink is brought to you by Pine Valley Press, a Williamstown, Massachusetts-based music publishing company, and by Peacock Pots. Check out their handcrafted pottery coming soon at peacockpots.com.
I want to turn our attention now to the other side of the ocean, to the United States, to Washington, D.C. It's not warfare in the hot sense of the Middle East, but there's continuing problems in the House of Representatives. Got to talk about it. What is going on with the Republicans in the House of Representatives, Joel? You covered legislature for a long time.
Well, and I've been thinking about this. What happened to the Republican Party that I covered in the Maryland General Assembly? I mean, those guys were conservatives, but they weren't crazy. They weren't performance artists. They actually were trying to further their points of view. They were trying to do what they thought they should do for their constituents. And then you turn around and look at the likes of Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Jim Jordan in Congress, and you just can't figure out what happened to the Republican Party that I used to know.
Yeah, no resemblance.
Guys that, my sister who lives in Pennsylvania says these are the guys that make her embarrassed to be a Republican.
Candy, do you buy the Republican point of view that Democrats have some responsibility? Well, Republicans say they have all the blame, but that they have any responsibility for the mess that we are now confronting?
I don't buy it. While while Kevin McCarthy was trying so hard to be speaker, he essentially pulled the handgun out of the safe, loaded the handgun, took the safety off, handed it to Matt Gaetz, and he's shocked that Matt Gaetz used it on him. And now you've got Jim Jordan, who sort of in his backwards way, going from 20 opponents to now 22 opponents to who knows how many if he ever has another vote. It reminds me of that line in National Lampoon Vacation. Sure, you hate him now, but just wait till you get to know him. It's like, holy cow. So to cut to the chase, we have a GOP that can't get it together, a GOP that won't work with Democrats, a GOP that, as Trump said, is eating each other, and somehow it's the Democrats' fault. That dog don't hunt.
Well, it is true that the Democrats could have kept Kevin McCarthy in, and we would not be facing a situation where there's possible nuclear war. Nuclear world war is not impossible right now, and we don't have a legislature, a Congress that can do a thing about it. Not one thing by the rules, if you play by the rules right now. So I do hope that the point they're getting across to the American people that Republicans cannot govern seems pretty obvious right now. I hope that is worth the real danger that the country is in right now.
I do have to say, Rosemary, that I wouldn't work with a man who didn't vote to certify the election,
right,
who essentially had to deal with Biden on the budget and then immediately gave it up, and then goes on a Sunday talk shows and throws the Democrats under the bus, and the Democrats say, "Ooh, more of that, please."
Yeah. No, there's no dispute about that. Doesn't it make you horrified to think that if Jordan got in and Trump is the nominee and loses, and then we're in the thing where we're certifying elections? I mean, I think that's what really is at stake, and and I was very happy to see them. Even more Republicans voted against him the second time than the first time. Joel, I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No problem. I was thinking Candy's reference to the Democrats and Kevin McCarthy. You can't blame the Democrats for saying, no, we're not voting for you, fella. You reneged on how many agreements you voted to. You wanted to overturn the election. Well, take a hike. But then you looking back on that now, you start to wonder, well, was that such a bad idea? Looking at what they've got going on now, maybe Kevin McCarthy wouldn't have been such a bad deal after all.
He's not looking as bad as he did once.
Yeah, right, exactly.
I mean, he's only an unreliable liar. That seems pretty good compared to some of the rest.
Outside of that, what's your problem?
Do you see any possibility of some dark horse Republican or Democrat, a conservative Democrat, that would be acceptable, that we're not thinking about, who's not on our radar right now?
I can see Candy and I are both shaking our heads no.
I can't either. I can't
imagine who it would be. I mean, Steve Scalise, the guy who once described himself as David Duke.
Yeah. Let's get the KKKer in there. That's great.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I don't know. I despair of this. And is there a way to change the rules at this point? And educate me. Will we, in January, if they were to allow the Speaker pro tem to have any kind of power to at least keep going, would we have a chance in January for a Democratic takeover of the House again? Or are there not enough seats up? I'm asking. I don't know the answer to this. How long can this go on?
That's really hard to say. Well, Democrats aren't going to take over in January. The elections are not till next November.
You're right. Right. This year won't help us at all, of course.
No. Is there any chance somebody's going to have a change of heart? I'm not holding my breath on that.
The most shocking thing to me was listening to Matt Gaetz being quizzed on CNN about what he thinks he accomplished by ousting Kevin McCarthy. What did you achieve with this? And he had a hard time answering this. They said, well, no legislation is being considered. And his response was, well, there was a lot of legislation that we were considering that I didn't want us to consider. That's what we're in the hands of nihilists and anarchists right now.
Keeping in mind, Jim Jordan is proud of not having gotten a bill through Congress in the entire time he's been there.
Oh my God, despicable.
I wasn't elected to pass laws.
Yeah. So who knows where this is going to end up? It may be that Jordan or McCarthy are both out, or maybe they'll be back in again, or there'll be new people who are going to be vying for this. The one thing I think for certain is it will be a Republican, probably a really bad one, and not a Democrat.
And our Mail on the Brink is brought to you by Pine Valley Press, a Williamstown, Massachusetts-based music publishing company, and by Peacock Pots. Check out their handcrafted pottery coming soon at peacockpots.com.
Well, we wish that we could forget about what's happening in the world and in the house, and we can't because I guess, old as we are, guys, we're still young enough that we can worry about memory. And so for the last segment, I wanted to talk about some new research that's been in the news lately about memory loss and dementia and what happens when we get older. Candy, I know you have some thoughts on this.
Well, having just turned 70 last week, I have to admit that this topic is intriguing to me because I don't have the fears. And, I had a grandmother who had dementia. And, it was tough all the way around. But personally, it's like, I can't do anything about it. It's going to happen if it's going to happen. And, I know what time the garbage train runs through Sandwich. And if it comes to it, me and the garbage train are going to get to know each other really, really well. And I say that sort of in jest. I was brought back to this topic, not only by you, Rosemary, and your questions, but also because Len Downey, the former editor of the Washington Post, apparently has written a book, his new memoir called 80, an octogenarian's journal, of which an excerpt was in the Washington Post. And the first thing I was reminded of was that Len Downey is a fabulous editor, one of the best ever, but as a writer himself,
not so much.
Like Woodward, kind of dry. But the thing I took away from it was there was nothing remarkable in his vision of turning 80. It was like, fell down, pain in right butt cheek. I took my pills with applesauce. I visited the dermatologist and had some of my face burned off. Fell again. I read more obits now. Oh, my auto insurance just went up. And I'm like, okay, so where's the, where's the there? Where's the,
yeah.
And that's when it came to me that we're all in the same boat here. And if we're lucky, we age with people who are aging on the same timeline. And maybe that's just Pollyanna on my part, but that's kind of where I am.
Okay, so my mother has dementia, and she has lost memory. Her conversations now are the same 3 or 4 questions repeated over and over and over again. And I have come to see that forgetting some things is not bad. She can't remember, for example, my dad's funeral. She can't remember her mother dying. This is not terribly awful, but she can't function. She's not herself. There's such a loss of identity there that memory loss really does scare me way more than physical diseases, including even cancer that you can get. If I had to choose, I want neither. I wanted them to fix arthritis and death. I thought the baby boomers were going to sail into eternal life. And here we are dealing with this. But the memory stuff is interesting to me because is it true that there's really nothing we can do? We have not figured out what that is up to now, but science is working on this. And one of the studies that came out recently, it was in the Washington Post, covered a lot, was there are things you can do. Some of them I know we are already not doing: drinking, smoking, do not help your memory. Sleep does. Sleep a lot. Uh, Eat healthy. If you're obese, you're going to have a tendency to have dementia. You can prevent that. Exercise is the best thing, and being social. Talking with friends like this is very good for keeping your memory. So that's what we're doing for this. And the number one thing I hate it is exercise. I too had a recent birthday, and someone sent me a card that said, "The secret to staying young is diet and exercise." And you open it up, and it says rightly, "That secret sucks." My son, the fitness trainer, says, "Yeah, if you want to stay and live to 100 and really be yourself, you have to get on an exercise bike or a treadmill." Oh my gosh. Joel, how about you?
I'm so sorry to hear that. Because well, I read that same study in that same piece in the Post, and as I read it, I said, well, I'm careful about my diet. I am way overweight, but I am careful about my diet. I exercise. I do a lot of walking. I get on the elliptical machine a couple of times a week, and it also talked about things like reading and having social contact, and you can slow the process. So I'm not terribly worried about it, and it made me feel better when I realized that if you occasionally forget names and things like that, big deal. You can live with it. It's to be expected. And that those changes start at 50, and I'm well past that milestone. So I'm not terribly worried about all of it. But there are times when I walk into a room and go, that,
oh yeah,
what am I doing here? Or better yet, I'll pull my phone out and get online to look up something and get distracted. And by the time I finish with what I'm distracted by, I forget what I was looking up. So
it's true.
But
so here there are coping mechanisms I've discovered.
Right.
One is humor, which I know both of you use. I have more lines for when I forget stuff in class and my students are looking at me horrified than comedians do for hecklers. I'm ready for it. And the second thing are these little laptops, these computers. Our parents didn't have that. I forget something now and I just punch it in, and I can find an answer relatively quickly. Let me get this exactly for you. And that works immensely well too. So we're kind of lucky that we have these little techniques.
Yeah, but, the other day, one of my neighbors was asking me about some gigs I have coming up with some bands I'm in, and I said, "Well, wait a minute, I'm playing. Wait, hold it, it's on my phone. Here,
there you go.
And bingo. Oh yeah."
Yeah, there you go. Or I have the whole name for you. I got to check the spelling. I'll send it to you in a message later. I'll text it to you. Yeah. Right. Candy, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I didn't have kids, and I find now that I put myself in a place where kids are, whether it's working in the library or it's working at the local BMX racetrack as a race official. I put myself in with kids, and they keep me on my toes. They're talking in a new language that I don't know, but I want to learn it. And they talk about things that I'm just, and I write things down, and it's like, I got to go look that up. What are they talking about? And I come home and I look it up, and I'm real sort of happy about it. So I'm making up for lost time with kids. Maybe that's part of the mechanism as well.
I find my kids have aged me greatly, and the opposite of that, but. So as we're wrapping up here, I realize that in 2 episodes now, I have not mentioned the name of Trump. I can't believe that I have done this. And so we have a little bit of time. There's new developments in some of his legal cases. You think this is the end? Is it coming? Is it finally coming for him, Joel?
No. This guy, he said I could shoot somebody in the middle of what was it, Fifth Avenue?
Right.
And get away with it. And I think he can.
Candy, are you more hopeful for the future of the country?
I think Biden's going to win handily next November. I think the Democrats are going to retake the House based on what's going on now. And I think they hold the Senate. I think this whole thing has been really bad for the Republicans. And, and that's how I get through the day.
Yeah. I mock this as liberal wishfulness, because my nightmare, what I think of is Trump will get in, Robert Kennedy will hurt Biden, his age will hurt him, all these crises will hurt him. Trump will get in, and then think about how he would handle Ukraine or Gaza or the House of Representatives chaos. That's my nightmare.
That's too scary, Rosemary.
I know. So with that, I want to conclude with a toast to the young people. We did not really appeal to them with all this doom, gloom, and old age stuff, but I want to make a toast that they have a future to look forward to, and that there is peace in Gaza and in Ukraine and in the U.S. House of Representatives.
Cheers.
And our Mail on the Brink is brought to you by Pine Valley Press, a Williamstown, Massachusetts-based music publishing company, and by Peacock Pots. Check out their handcrafted pottery coming soon at peacockpots.com.